Available now from Severin Films on Blu-ray is 1980's Midnight. This was written and directed by John A. Russo, who you may know as being related to George A. Romero, in that John Russo was the guy who wrote Night of the Living Dead. He's got a tiny part in that too. And this was a film he did with a lot of people sort of adjacent to the Romero world. So John A. Russo, director and writer. You have Bill Hintzman, who's the cemetery zombie from the beginning of Night of the Living Dead, did stills for the film. You had John Amplas, who is the star of Martin and who was in Dawn of the Dead, is in this film in a role. And then you had makeup effects by Tom Savini. So this has sort of the Romero family stamp on it, or the Romero pedigree involved with this film. This is a film I'd never seen until this Blu-ray came out. It's a movie I'd always heard of. I don't recall it being wildly easy to see, but maybe I wasn't looking that hard. Basically, the film, it opens with this little girl in a tall, grassy area, caught in a bear trap, leg caught in a bear trap, and this mother and her kids showing up with like axe handles and things. The mother says some things about they can take any form. She's a demon. We gotta do what I showed you how to do. And they basically beat the little girl to death. You don't see it, but you know what's going on. And then flash forward, there's a young teen in modern day, which would be 1979, 1980 when this film was shot. She's at home alone. Her drunken cop stepfather, Lawrence Tierney, from Reservoir Dogs and many other things, shows up, and the red tape, if you bought Film Threat in the old days. And he basically tries to accost her. I'm not going to give you every detail of this film, just the setup. She knocks him out with a radio, but in the most gentle knockout you could imagine, like, oh, I've been knocked out. It was kind of hilarious. She basically runs away from home. Two guys in a van pick her up. They're respectable. Two college guys in a van pick her up. And eventually they just stumble into this area where they are captured by two crooked cops, it seems. And this girl winds up, I'm really trying to not give you every detail of the film. These two cops accost them, and the girl winds up being kidnapped and finds herself in this house of bizarre, like, devil worship or something. So it's this strange, like, it's a horror movie. It's a little bit of a road movie. It's at times an unintentional comedy. And then it has the whole satanic weirdness going on in a small town. I didn't really care for this. This was really, I guess this is one of those your mileage may vary things, because it's very cheaply made. It's very kind of amateurishly made, shall I say. A lot of the acting ain't that great. The leads are okay. The lead girl is good. Tierney is Tierney, even though some of the material, some of the dialogue is really bad and expository, like really unnatural. They meet up with the people in the van, the kids in the van meet up with a priest and his daughter, and his expository, I have to say this so you know what's going on, dialogue is really bad and not terribly well delivered. To me, the greatest strength of this movie is that this was shot all in actual locations in 1980, somewhere, I'm presuming, in the greater Pittsburgh area, since that's where the Romero people were based. And honestly, the best parts of this movie for me were when they went into a store, because I was just suddenly, it's this really nice, as good as it's going to look, HD transfer of this film, and I'm looking at all the packages. So honestly, I'm watching this and I'm not paying attention to the story so much as I am, oh, look at that bag of Doritos. That's what Doritos looked like when I had them as a kid. And honestly, I almost squeaked with glee when they were paying in a convenience store and there was a package of Velements, because my grandmother used to buy Velements, and I joke about Velements all the time because I don't think they've existed for a long time. And so this is where we're at, is that, you know, for all of the horror and supernatural and Romero ties to this that this film has, my greatest joy was seeing vintage 1979, 1980 food packages and candy packages and signage in stores. So I really didn't care for this. I just thought it was so badly done for me. And I don't ask a lot out of a horror movie, and I don't ask for everybody to be Olivier in these things, and the dialogue doesn't have to be Mammoth, you know? I just want to have fun. And I just thought it was kind of a slog and kind of dull and really awkward and just not very well made for me. I did not get a chance to look at the extras, but there are a bunch of extras on this. You have an interview with John Russo. You have an interview with Sam Sherman, who was with Al Adamson in Independent International Pictures, produced this film. Sam Sherman is the man of 1,000 stories. You have an interview with Severin. You have an interview with John Amplas. So there's an interview with pretty much all the notable names attached to this film. So that may well be worth it for Romero scholars and people who do like this movie. I'm sure it's got an audience. It just really didn't work for me, despite looking and sounding fantastic. I mean, the audio was so crisp, it was almost distracting. It was one of those things where sometimes, and it's a weird thing to even sound like I'm complaining about, but sometimes I will see a transfer of something old where the image quality is one thing, but the audio is so crisp, it's like it. Maybe I'm just used to movies from that era not sounding that crisp, that era and that production level, because the music was so clear. It sounded like it was newly recorded, and it took me out of it a little bit, strangely enough. I'm not saying to anybody who's remastering anything, make the audio sound bad. It's something that just occurred to me while I was watching this. Otherwise, it looks razor sharp and crisp, and the color is as good as I think the original film stock would allow. So certainly, if you're a fan of Midnight or a fan of the works of Russo or the larger family of Romero regulars, it's worth checking out. At any rate, Midnight is now available on Blu-ray and I believe DVD from Severin Films.